Am I crazy to have Jordan Poole that high? What about Fred VanVleet? Well, I'm going to debate the rankings of those players, plus Alperen Sengun and Mikal Bridges with Sun from The Athletic and from Rasball, Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com. You can find me on Twitter, as always, at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free. We are available on all platforms. Dropped a mock draft show yesterday from Pick 1. There's going to be a Pick 2 show coming later today. The rankings battles continue, and that's what we're going to be doing on today's show, debating four players and ripping the arse out of each other. Well, metaphorically, of course. Yeah, the other stuff you've got to pay for on the other platforms. So we're going to talk rankings of those four players. No more delays. Let's crack in. All right, let's bring him in. I did say he was from Rasball. He's not from Rasball anymore. Rasball's gone. It's all about The Athletic. It's all about DraftKings. Welcome in. Son, welcome. Good to have you.
Thank you very much, Josh. Honored to be here. Before we begin, I do want to say one thing, just to let everybody, all the listeners know out there. Josh grinds his ass off to provide fantasy content for all you guys. He's also, helped sell a bunch of the analysts and writers. And I know he's grinding his, just his ass off. A few years ago, I reached out to him when I was, I had questions with projections and things like that. And, he was always kind enough to respond to me and to kind of help me out with that process. So I just wanted to give you a shout out and let all the people know that, you always have time for the little people like me. So shout out to you, Josh.
I don't know if you're the little people, mate, but yeah. Look, I'm happy to help anybody who's doing stuff in the industry and starting out. And it's I can't believe it's been this long since, for us to get you onto the show, because that was about 2-3 years ago when you were reaching out and doing those projections. But here you are now, and we're ready to debate things. And you've come so far that you've got enough balls to now tell me how shit I am at a couple of these projections. You're sitting here and go, Josh, I see your list and it's trash, and you're going to have a crack at it. So we're going to have a crack at one of them. We'll start with this first one that you picked out of my list, and I know that people are going to be interested to hear this one. We're going to look at Jordan Poole. I just did a mock draft earlier today, and I got Poole at pick 49, which is bang on his ADP, but I've got him much, much earlier than that. I've got him sitting in like the third round, close to the second round, if I just have a quick look. Yeah, I've got him almost at the end of the second round. Now, I probably would never take him there, knowing that in most situations I can get him at the back end of the third round. But what's wrong? What's your problem?
Yeah, this one's tough, and I know I'm going to get a lot of heat for this, because I know...
I'll get more heat, don't worry. People hate Jordan Poole.
The people love him. You love him. You had him ranked 23. I know a lot of people that I respect in the industry, are really high on him as well. And I kind of get it, but, when I, sit back and kind of break things down, like, first off, he's going from a Warriors team in a Steve Kerr offense, free-flowing, better talent around him, to a Wes Unseld offense, where just 2 years ago, where the players were like questioning him, hey, what's the direction, what's the structure of the team's offense? They were wondering if, he was putting those guys in the best position to succeed. So that's one. Second thing is, like, I understand, like, he's going to get a ton of usage. I get it. And he's going to put up a ton of shots. But, here's the thing, like, at what cost is that going to come? So, he shot, 44% from the field over the last 2 seasons. Mm-hmm. Granted, you have to take into account that's with better teammates and in a better environment. Now, he can get, 18 to 20 shots per game this season, average 4 to 5 dimes, possibly. That's good. Free throw percentage is going to be excellent. But, the turnover is going to be over 3. Probably grab 3 rebounds, no defensive stance. Or at least they're going to be very minimal. Now, last season, there were 25 players who attempted at least 18 shots per game. Only 5 of them had a field goal percentage below 45%. LaMelo Ball, Trae Young, Terry Rozier, Cade Cunningham, Klay Thompson. Only one of those players finished in the top 50. LaMelo at 30 on a per game basis. Now, Trey was 51st, but the thing is, those two guys, they're elite in dimes, right? So, I mean, you're getting 7, 8, maybe more dimes. So that's not going to be the case for Poole. Probably the best comparison, Klay Thompson, swap out some boards for dimes. Klay finished 66 in per game rating. Personally, I just don't see much difference between like an Anthony Simons type, which you could get probably in the top 75-ish range. Now, Poole may score, 3 to 4 more points possibly, but the rest of the package, I feel like is very similar. So let me hear what you got.
Okay, there's a couple of things there that
all right.
I agree with you that he will score a couple more points. He's quite similar to Hero. He's quite similar to Simons, as you mentioned. The difference here with Poole to me is, yes, those 3 to 4 extra points actually make a pretty significant difference. He played 30 minutes a night last season, had a usage of 29 on Golden State. I think he's going to go over that. I think he's going to play more than 30 minutes a night. He had 5 free throw attempts at 87. 2 years ago, he shot 93 from the line. Like, if he gets 93 from the line on 7 attempts, which I don't think is crazy if he plays 3 extra minutes a night, like, that's already a legally thing. And you mentioned Trae Young being 51st. Well, that's just the fault in rankings. Like, that's just clearly not accurate. Like, he's not that player, right? And Poole might come in those rankings around 50 as well. But that's garbage because he's just not that value of player. And it's going to be, for some people, obviously it's a no-go because you don't want... I think he's going to be 43% from the field, and that for some people will have no bearing or have no relevance on their team. But for the others that don't care about the field goals or have buffered at other places, he's going to score, let's say conservatively, I'd say over 25 a game. I'd say that's conservative to get him to that number. He's not playing with the Scoot Henderson, who's an elite ball handler passer. Like, Tyus Jones is that, but he's very passive. So Poole's going to run the offense. Defensive stats, I agree. They're going to be bad. But part of it is just the volume of free throws at that level, I think is going to be very impressive. Again, coming off the bench last season, he averaged 5 a game. And in 29 minutes a game over the last 2 months, he averaged 6 free throw attempts per game. Like, just get that to 7.5 and you shoot 90%. Well, that's already, like, to me, that and 27 points with 3 threes, maybe 6 assists. I don't know what more you can ask for. It's not for everybody. You're right. There's going to be shit rebounds there. So, yeah, in terms of, like, we're looking at him and you're saying, Josh, you got him too high. And I think third round for him is totally fine. I wouldn't do it in round 2. But if I'm getting him in round 4 or round 5, I'm pretty happy with that. But where do you have him? Like, how far are you taking him at that ADP number? Is that your spot for him?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not taking him unless, obviously it's context, right? Team build, what you need, things like that. So, as in terms of my rankings where I have him now, I mean, it's closer to 100.
Whoa, what?
Yeah, so I got him, like I said, I probably have Simons in the 75 to 80 range. Mm-hmm. So I'll probably, he's probably similar to that. And like you said, I think Hero was a pretty good comp too.
Yep.
How would you compare him to like a Terry Rozier?
Okay, so he's going to do more ball handling than Terry Rozier. He's a better passer than Rozier, and he's going to get to the line more than Rozier, and he's a higher percentage free throw shooter than Rozier. Rozier also has to compete with Bridges, Ball, Miller maybe in terms of usage, Gordon Hayward there as well, and Rozier could also get traded at some point. I believe he's an expiring contract. I just don't think they're very similar players at all. I think Jordan Poole is going to be the focal point, even though he's technically a shooting guard. He's going to play the way that Bradley Beal played, as the guy that just initiates basically most things. Tyus Jones is a point guard, but yeah, and he'll do that too, but he's not Kentavious Caldwell-Pope shooting guard, Jordan Poole. He is a combo guard, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal sort of role. He's not those players, but that's the role that I believe he is going to play, which puts him in a very different situation than where Terry Rozier is. Yeah,
no, that's excellent points. Yeah, I mean, it's probably ridiculous for me to have him at 100, but I guess I was kind of making a point where I'll probably never draft him unless like I'm really behind in scoring.
Yep.
Which, if I fall behind in scoring, then something's really went wrong in my draft in the beginning. So yeah, I think for me, even if like best case scenario for me, I guess closer to the 40 range, top 25, because I feel like the guys in the top 25, it's difficult to poke holes in most of those guys. Either they have elite efficiency or they're able to contribute across the board. I just feel like there's just too many holes for me to kind of sign off on a top 25 ranking for him.
Yeah, look, I said I wouldn't take him there, right? That's where a lot of the stuff came out. I've got a decent level of confidence in his health as well. That volume in those important categories, which are the higher volume ones, which dry up quicker, which is the three that drive the quickest points, assists, and free throws, and that's where he dominates, right? So that boosts him up to me. It's not about like where I can get all the blocks in round 5 or I can grab threes in round 11. Like what he does in the three big volumes that he's going to bring, assists not huge volume, but definitely above average, where assists average is like 3.7. Like he could get close to double that, not quite, but those three categories, getting them early, because if you don't target them, that's fine. But if you want to target him, you have to get him early. You just can't. Yeah. You can't do that later on, and that gives him that little boost. Again, it's not going to be for everybody, but I appreciate your perspective because you offer a different perspective on that. Now we're gonna get into talk about the next guy in just a second.
All right.
But today's episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs. It's always a good day when I get up and put my Bird Dogs on. The most comfortable shorts you'll ever find. Because I know when I put them on, whatever the day throws at me, I'm going to be able to cover, whether it's sitting on the couch or sitting on my bed or sitting on a second couch or sitting on another chair. They're going to be comfortable. But in the rare case that I go outside and interact with humanity, whether it's at the shops or at a bar or at a restaurant or at a friend's house, Bird Dogs are going to be able to get me there without anyone questioning why you're wearing these shorts. Well, I'm wearing them because they're bloody comfortable. And they also look great with their cloud knit fabric. It's going to make your legs look great. Nice little slimming through the thighs as well. Plus, their anti-stink sweat wicking fabric keeps you cool and dry all day long. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA or you enter the promo code LockedOnNBA at checkout. You get a free Bird Dogs water bottle with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA for a free water bottle at checkout. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you. All right. Now, the next one. You're going to have a go at me for this next one here as well. And it is the big fella in Houston, Alperen Sengun. I think I know what you're going to say. I know what I'm going to say in reply to it, but Lloyd, let me have it. Let's go.
All right. I actually think your ranking isn't bad. I just wanted an excuse to talk to Sengun just because I love him. I love him so much. I just think he's very skilled. I think it's well within the range of outcomes that he breaks out and could far exceed his draft ADP. Over the summer, Ime Udoka and Stone, they've been talking positively about him. Back in May when Udoka first signed on with the Rockets, he basically planned, or, granted, it's just talk, but, he's kind of like, yeah, maybe I'll use Sengun more in a Jokic type role on offense. But I think the biggest thing for me was, he averaged 28 minutes per game. Mm-hmm. I think that can go up over 30 because, the prior regime, Silas, I mean, he just kind of messing around and clowning around and taking him out. And what I appreciated with Udoka was, he basically clowned Silas and was like, yeah, I'm not going to put my players in positions where it doesn't utilize their strengths or in positions where they cannot succeed. And he kind of focused on the defense, drop coverage may not be the best scheme to utilize with Sengun. So I think he's going to allow him to play defense, to scheme a defense, to utilize the strengths of everybody. And obviously, Fred VanViere and Dylan Brooks, they're going to help out with that. From a defensive perspective, I mean, even with the Silas scheme, he still averaged 0.9 steals, 0.9 blocks per game. So I think there's a chance that the defensive stats can increase as well. So I do think that there could be an increase in usage on offense. He's a great passer. He's a great scorer. So I think we could see upticks across the board, both offensively and defensively.
All right, so let me defend myself here. I've got him at 60, which is ADP 61. But as I've said many times on this show, I said I don't actually know that he's going to finish there. I think he could be 80th or I think he could be 30th because I'm not sure there's an in-between really here. And you say that in May, Udoka was high and he came out and they talked him up. Yeah, and then they went and tried to get 36-year-old Brook Lopez to start ahead of him. So, just color me a little bit skeptical that they're bought in on Sengun being their guy. He cops a lot of blame for his defense. I think it's incredibly overblown how bad defensively he is. I think he's okay. I don't think he's good, but I think he is okay. And if it was me, and I think his talent dictates this, he'd play 33, 34 minutes. But there's not one single thing that this dickhead organization has done to suggest they believe in him. And while we can criticize Silas, you know who had the hand up Silas's ass and puppeting him? It was Rafael Stone, the bloke who's organizing everything, who hired Ime Udoka. Sure. Who was determining, hey, we've got to start Bruno Fernando so we can make Kevin Porter Jr. our guy. Cool. Good decision, Rafael. So I don't know that he's going to change his mind on that when it was very clear to basically everybody that Sengun was their best player last season, and he was very obviously their best center last season, but they didn't buy it. And on a team that the backup center was Bruno Fernando and he still played only 29 minutes, it's embarrassing. Now, I would play him a ton, and I think that in that range, in late round 5, early round 6, I draft him every single time. Right now, you've got him in at the end of round 4. I actually can get behind that a little bit, but my problem is that if they don't buy into it and if they go Jabari Smith, Tari Eason as the 4 and the 5 a lot of the time, and he gets benched for entire fourth quarters again, well, it's not going to happen here in Houston, and that's why I'm being a little bit scared about where they're going to position him. They also bring in Reggie Bullock today, who can play at the 3 and the 4 as well, meaning extra competition for those minutes to push Eason and Smith down. I just am worried that they are going to be I'm not worried. They are an inept franchise, and that they're going to, again, limit what Sengun does, and that makes it hard for me to go and take him with my 4th pick, say. So it's not that I don't believe in him. I think he's awesome. I think he's a top 25 player just sort of waiting to happen. I just don't see it happening with the way... And every indication I hear from Rockets reporters is like, I don't think they believe in him. And the Rockets reporters like, I don't get it, but the front office does not seem to feel that same way that we might feel about him.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. I think a common theme that we're going to discuss about on this pod is kind of like opportunity cost and, range of outcomes. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, like when you're drafting somebody, if you're paying the top, you're paying the ceiling, you're not leaving much room for profit. And, sometimes, the only way to go down is down, even though it's a few ticks, few points here, whatever, a few, usage tick there, that's huge. So a lot of times, like, if you're able to grab somebody below ADP or at cost and, there's some profit potential there, I think that's the type of situation that you want to be in. I think Sengun is more there's some room for profit potential because there is some uncertainty as to the situation, as you alluded to. Does the coach and the front office, do they totally buy into him? Whereas, I've also seen positive, news on that front. Whereas, not to take this back to Jordan Poole, because I think it all ties in together. But say like Jordan Poole, I mean, his draft costs, I mean, the helium has just taken off. Once everybody was like, yeah, he's going to be the guy, he's going to get all the usage. So, I mean, you're pretty much acquiring him at ceiling. I mean, you're expecting at the highest range of outcomes. Whereas, I feel like, there's some, chance of, not really fulfilling that cost, and there's room to the downside. Whereas I feel like, Sengun is on the kind of the opposite spectrum of that.
I think that depends, though. Like, if you're drafting Poole at his Yahoo ADP or Fantrax, it's at 50. So I think there's room to grow.
Yeah, true.
If you're getting him
at site-dependent.
His ESPN ADP is 28, and you're right. There is no real upside at 28 in taking Jordan Poole, and so it's something I'd be super interested in doing, because you're right, it is all about that value. And Sengun, probably at that 60 mark, it's sort of in the middle where it can go either way, 20 spots, I think. When you push it further like you have, to me, that means that like you switch the 50-50 to a 25-75. Still got upside. Like, he can still jump 15 spots, 20 spots from there easily. But the balance of probabilities means it probably pushes down, in my mind. It probably pushes down more often than not. Now, I've got 2 that I want to pick on you about from your list. We're going to get to that. We'll get to that in a sec.
All right.
Because today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Snap into action this NFL season. See that? They said snap because you snap the ball in the NFL. That's how smart this ad read is. It's NFL season. It's FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. When you place a $5 bet, that's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. Now, I've been dreading doing this FanDuel read because last week I was telling everybody that the Dolphins are going undefeated and they're going to win the Super Bowl, and I wouldn't shut up about it until they lost. Well, they lost. So, yeah, do whatever you want. I don't care about the NFL anymore. It's all over to me. The Dolphins, whatever. Just do whatever you want. Just go onto FanDuel, though, because you'll get the bonus bets. But bet on whoever you want, because it doesn't matter anymore. And all this stuff is pretty meaningless. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel is an official partner of the NFL. And don't forget to gamble responsibly. Okay. So now it's my turn to have a crack over here, and we're going to talk Mikal Bridges. Now, it's very common to see him go in round 2. If you look at Yahoo's rank number on their side, not their X rank, their rank, he's at 5, which is, please don't do it. Please don't ever do that. Please don't take him anywhere near that first round. That's clearly insane. His ADP is 19. You've got him up at 15, which is very, very early. I don't want to preempt your arguments for it, but tell me why I shouldn't tell you that you're wrong.
Well, it's funny because, less than 5 minutes ago, we're talking about kind of, opportunity costs, range of outcomes, things like that. So yeah, obviously I'm not leaving myself too much room for profit potential. I'm definitely at the higher end of the range of outcomes. Yeah, no, for sure. I think, prior to his breakout last year, he was known as a guy that, contributes a little something, something in every category without hurting you anywhere. And that had value, right? But then, before the trade deadline, Phoenix, obviously with injuries and things like that, they put him in a high usage role and he was able to thrive. And then when he got traded to Brooklyn, it was wheels up. I mean, granted, the efficiency came down a little bit, but he was able to produce at a very, very high level with a 30% usage rate. And so for me, seeing his ability to thrive in that environment, that just gave me a lot of confidence because outside of the efficiency, none of his other, all of his other numbers were able to, he was able to maintain his defensive stats. So,
was he though? Like he averaged,
well,
over the final 16 games, he averaged 0.8 steals and 0.5 blocks. And 3 years ago, he was averaging 1.4 steals, like 1.2. Yeah. And sorry for interrupting you, but like those,
no,
that's my worry. That one of my worries with him, and I still have him in the third round, right? But that we are expecting a lot of stuff to happen here that I'm not convinced is going to. And the defensive stats, I don't know that they stay at elite. I think they might be below average.
Okay, no, that's totally fair. I think, the one thing for both of our arguments is that the sample size is still pretty small.
Sure.
Was it 20, 25 games, 28 games, something like that. So whether he, I can definitely hear that argument that because of the high usage role, more emphasis on offense, that his focus on defense is kind of mitigated and he doesn't want to, shoot the passing lanes and things like that. So I can see that too. But at the same time, I can also make the argument that now that he's been in that role and he's kind of adjusted to it, now he has a whole off season to kind of reflect and do like that. Now he's a little bit more comfortable and he can get back to his bread and butter, so to speak. And then if you can combine that with, the 20 plus scoring and, maybe some upticks in assists, he talked about trying to be more of a playmaker and things of that nature. Also, the addition of Ben Simmons may help him as well. Taking some of the load off. I don't know. But, there are some things there where I feel like the floor is incredibly high. And I think, he's shown his ability to access the ceiling. And I think the final thing to the component here is that, the dude just plays. He played every freaking game. And especially in the top, couple rounds, there's a lot of guys in there where, man, you're like, if they play 65 games, I'm fucking happy, right? So, you're getting a guy that, there's a really good chance that he's playing 80 games. That has a ton of value to me.
Yeah, or he gets hurt, and then all that value that playing games means nothing, right? So I don't want to draft guys on the basis that they're not going to get hurt because we just don't know. What I do want to point out though is that over the final 16 games, he averaged 27 points per game. He had 32 usage. We want to talk about Jordan Poole's usage, like that's decent enough. But what Bridges did right was he started not getting to the rim as much. He started relying upon these pull-up mid-ranges, and the efficiency wasn't there. He was under 46% over those final 16 games. He was at 42% over the final 7 games. And you talk about assists. Well, he averaged 2.4 over the final 16 with 4.2 rebounds. And with Simmons there, he's not getting more assist opportunities. Like if Dinwiddie and Simmons are starting, when is Bridges getting, he's not an assist player, he's not a rebounder. The defensive stats I think are going to drop. And again, this makes me feel like I hate him. I think he's going to be really high usage, a really good scorer. He might average 27 with 3 threes, but below average rebounds, below average assists, maybe average steals, below average blocks. Free throws, really, really strong. Field goals will be probably below average, but it depends. Is he going to rely upon pull-up mid-range twos? Is he going to start doing more of the high-value shots that he did in Phoenix? I don't know, because previous years, 54 from the field, 53 from the field. Last season, 47, and went down as we went on through the season as his role went up. So that, to me, puts him closer to the 30 mark versus early second. Whereas if you look at his overall numbers last season, they're pretty strong, but there's a whole big difference in role. And then, as you said, there's the Simmons factor. What the hell does that do? Does it make him better? Does it take the ball out of his hands in terms of playmaking more? I honestly don't know. And I'm not taking him at pick 15. I haven't seen him do it. And what I did see him do in that number 1 role, to me, wasn't worth that pick.
That's fair. I could totally buy that. I think the argument has a lot of validity, and there's a lot of credence to it. I guess my counter to that would be, I guess when you were talking and explaining like the whole situation in terms of like, the type of shots that he was trying to, the type of usage and things like that, was my mind immediately went to Kate Cunningham.
Yep.
And, he started relying on a different shot diet. But as the season went on, he kind of got more comfortable and he started to figure out things about what he can do, what he cannot do, what he got more comfortable. And then once he got more comfortable, then he just kind of took off. Obviously, he got hurt and things like that. But whether it happens to Mikal or not, that remains to be seen for sure. But everything that I've read about him in terms of, the type of player he is, work ethic, blah, 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 all that stuff, I just have a lot of confidence that having a whole offseason, having already gone through that type of like high usage role, I have a lot of confidence that he can learn from that and kind of adapt, and then he knows what to expect, and that he'll be able to kind of mix and match to where it blends all together. Now, like you said, the big caveat here is there is going to be a change in dynamics on the team. First off, I don't think Spencer Dinwiddie is going to be starting. If Ben Simmons plays, I think he's more like 6-man role, but that's here or there. But Ben Simmons is the big factor here. So there's definitely some uncertainty in that situation. So we don't know, but I do feel like just because of the nature of his game, it's just so well-rounded that the floor is so high, and I feel like he's shown access to ceiling, and I think he can get there.
The last one we're going to talk about, we go back to the Houston Rockets to talk about their new starting point guard. And of course, we're talking about Fred VanViere, who I have around the end of the second round, if I'm just double. I've got him at like sort of 19, 20, around that sort of an area. But you have him all the way down in the 40s. That's round 4 for Fred VanViere. So Fred VanViere, for reference, last season played 37 minutes a night, and we're not going to get a pushback here. We agree he's not going to play that much. Although, son, he played, like Ime Udoka played his starters a lot in Boston.
I saw that.
Not Nick Nurse numbers, but Tatum and Brown played a lot. So, Marcus Smart played a lot. It's not to say that he's going to play 32 a night. Like, I've got him at 35, 34, around that area. It's not Nick Nurse 37, but it is going to drop. But last season, he averaged 19 points, hit 3 threes, 4 rebounds, 7 assists, 1.8 steals, 0.6 blocks. Actually averaged 2.2 steals over the final 22 games of last season. Horrible shooter. We know this. Horrible field goal guy, high free throw player. Apart from losing a couple of minutes, I'm not sure what's going to change for him.
Okay.
Like what puts him down into that 4th round zone for you?
Yeah, there's just too much uncertainty, and like I said, it goes back to the opportunity cost and range of outcomes.
Yep.
And I think everybody we're all like the projection system and everything. I mean, if you look at his history, it's pretty easy to project. He's one of the easiest guys to project, right? Because boom, it's just his career average, his averages over the last 3-4 years is just basically the same. You just type it in. And I think a lot of people are just kind of taking those numbers and just transposing them to Houston, where I feel like there's more uncertainty than people are given credit for. And you already talked about the minutes, so that in of itself is going to be huge. But I mean, we don't know his role. It's a new city, it's a new team, it's a new coach, it's a new offensive scheme, new defensive scheme. There's new, teammates. Like, for example, like just say they do love Sengun and they give him the Jokic role, and his usage rate increases 8%, right? I mean, that's obviously affects Fred VanViere right there, right? So, does he become more of a spot-up shooter? Does he become more of a facilitator? Do the steals come down? I mean, if you go down to 1.4, I mean, that in of itself is pretty big.
That's true.
So I'm not saying that it's not possible that, he can return the top 20, value, because he's been so consistent. We know what type of player he is. I just feel like there's just, like I said earlier, like tying everything, opportunity costs and just, range of outcomes and things like that. Like, I just feel like there's more downside to Fred VanViere. And I'm not willing to pay a ceiling outcome for a player where, me personally, there's a lot of unknowns that it just scares me. So that's why I got him down, basically.
But you're willing to pay a ceiling outcome for Mikal Bridges. How very curious. How very curious
I know.
Indeed.
I knew that was coming, but I think the difference between those two is that outside of the Ben Simmons addition, if he does even come back, but it's basically the same team, same coach, same system. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like same system. I mean, who knows? Fred VanVleet might have gotten so used to the cold that he goes to Houston and then he's like, "What the hell is going on here?" Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he may not like the local cuisine. The new house that he's in, right? The guys next door might be partying out. I'm just talking shit.
No, but this is all true though, because players that join new teams, there is often some sort of a hit, right? There is something that goes on most of the time where it's like, what am I doing here? Like, how do I fit in? It's going to a new team versus having a new coach come to your team. It's the change there is not even remotely close. Going to a new team has an impact on guys, and I do agree with that. And I think probably end of round 2 is a more reasonable, even if it's round 3 for Fred VanVleet. But like, he's also going in some crazy spots I think he's on ESPN got an ADP of 60, which I don't really understand that in the slides.
That's too low.
Double check where that is. It keeps changing. Is it 69? ESPN ADPs, by the way, they're fishy. There's something wrong. They're changing 20 spots every week. And that to me is manipulation. There's no way that there's that many drafts going on that are changing the ADPs that quickly and by that amount. But he's now down at 69 and his rank is 27 on their category leagues. That doesn't add up to me. But in round 3, the end of round 2, which is a bit of a weird dead zone, I think, to me, that area, I feel all right about Fred. I don't have any concerns about his actual role, and it's not like he got by last season on having extraordinarily high usage or being a 20-point per game scorer, because he wasn't a 20-point per game scorer. So it's not like, wow, someone else is going to take all these shots away, because Pascal Siakam was already doing that last season, and I would argue that his teammates are probably worse this season than they were last year.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I hear you shit on ESPN quite often, and I totally agree with you. Like, do you think it's a bot that's doing it, or is it actually somebody that's going in there doing it manually?
No, I know that there are people that are doing the actual rankings. Okay. I know that they don't get afforded the amount of time that they need to do it. They're pushed in many different positions and they don't get the resources developed. The ADP stuff, I've got no idea what's going on, because the players are jumping 30 spots a week or dropping 30 spots, and there's absolutely no way that the drafts are happening and changing things that much. Someone is manually, I think, manipulating that. I don't know for sure, but it just seems a little bit fishy. And my other problem with ESPN is, like, you just can't use players. Like, you can't add Vasily Micic. He's not in their database. Like, the bloke was drafted 10 years ago. Can't add him. Can't add Dominic Barlow, who literally played in the NBA last season. And there's got to be other examples out there. And that's going to happen all through the year. That's part of my frustration with it. But we don't need to go on an ESPN rant over here. They'll do it. We're done. That's the end. That's your first appearance on the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast, son. It's great to have you here to have these chats regarding these players. Tell people what you got cracking over at the Athletic at the moment.
Yeah, Eric Wong brought me on last year to help him out. He's like basically, fantasy basketball elite. He's won a lot of high stakes, contests. So I was just very honored that he was able to bring me aboard. So I'm just trying to help him out with contact over there, fantasy basketball. So yeah, check out fantasy basketball content over there at the Athletic. Myself and Eric Wong, I think we're pumping out some pretty good content. And then I do stuff for DraftKings. It's more daily fantasy oriented. But yeah, I'm doing that over there. But I just wanted to thank you. This is a great time, Joss. Much appreciated for all you do for the community, and for bringing me on board to kind of talk hoops with you.
Absolutely, man. It was great. We'll get you back on soon. Thank you for coming on. Go follow him over on Twitter and check out the stuff over at Athletic. See you later. And that will do it for me today. Amazing that in all these ADP ranking battles, I'm undefeated. What a result. You couldn't have picked that. Follow this podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and on the Odyssey app and on YouTube. Thumb it up and leave your comments down below. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.